Captain, incoming message.
It was the dawn of the third age of mankind.
Groovy.
Hi-ho. This is me, Kermit the Frog.
Hello there.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Not a great plan.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Let's see what's out there. Engage.
Hey there, we're those Sci-Fi guys, and this is a Those Sci-Fi Guys show. Just two working dudes, different lives, different jobs, but a whole lot of love for science fiction and the fun that comes with. We are your hosts. I am P.S. McKay, and, coming to you the way P.S. McKay does. Bothered, harried, and, wrecking things left and right.
And I'm DT Calfman, and, I'm just glad to be here. It's been an interesting roller coaster the last few weeks.
Yeah, it has. Anyway, how you doing, DT?
I'm okay. Had kind of an interesting and busy weekend. How about you?
We did nothing. Mostly nothing. I did laundry, and I was able to actually start my book and get the first chapter done. So,
hurrah!
Long road ahead. So, but there's an opportunity, and with the first chapter down, it just lays the groundwork for the rest to be finished. So,
chapter 1 of 56 and book 3 of 12. All right, woo!
God,
you go,
Mack. Let me see. This is my outline right here. And speaking of chapters, 31. Oh, I stopped counting them. Oh, God. Okay, so here we go. I stopped counting them after chapter 35. So we're looking at least 40 chapters. This is 75 pages printed, just an outline.
Oh,
right here.
My.
So, ironically, it's sitting on top of this book here because, the last one I wrote. But I had to reference this several scenes in this book when I got this one started in the epilogue. So, there's an epilogue. So, the prologue, and then there will be an epilogue because there has to be, because I can't finish a story properly. I have to have a prologue or an epilogue to wrap it all up.
Well, many things do.
True, but yeah.
I mean, so we're about to review essentially what is a prologue.
This is also true. I was trying to figure that out. Is it a prologue?
Rogue One is kind of a prologue to the original trilogy, right? And
that's my point.
This is like the background notes to the prologue.
Seriously, it really was. Before we get into that main topic, though, how was your weekend? You said you were finally able to have something low key.
No, not even a little.
Oh.
I didn't leave work until like 7:30 ish on Friday.
Nice.
I was on call Saturday mornings, and of course, the phones rang early.
Groovy.
And then we did end up going to a Sox game. And it was looking pretty rough for a while. The Red Sox want to win.
Oh, they won. Sorry, they won.
Yes, that's what it was like by
most of the game.
By about the middle of the game when it was 5-0. I'm like, fun.
Yeah.
And then they started chipping away, and then in the 8th inning they tied it, and then held it down in the top of the 9th and bottom of the 9th. Big dog Raffy Devers comes up and blasts one right into the bullpen for a walk-off home run. Place goes nuts. Now I'm going to take a quick side tangent here to talk about the stupidity that involves the sports world.
Oh, no.
the NFL made the Washington franchise change its name from Redskins to the lamely named football team until they finally settled on Commanders. Kept the same color scheme, keep all this retired, whatever. It's still the same franchise, right? MLB made the Indians change their names to the Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
And even before that, they had removed a lot of the Native American imagery, especially the stereotypical red face Indian.
Which was based on a real person. And the family members of that person are really pissed that was erased.
Indian face?
Well, we're not talking the Cleveland Indians one. We're talking about Redskins one. But yeah.
Well, that was actually a more respectful looking depiction.
True. I mean, realistic. But I mean, the Redskins as a name, if you polled the Native Americans, it still had an 85% favorability rating among Native Americans. It wasn't Native Americans that wanted that name changed.
Still kind of insensitive.
If it wasn't sensitive to them, how is it insensitive?
I get it. Still not a good look, right?
I mean,
you couldn't get away with that with several other skin tones.
Not now, but you get grandfathered in. I mean, Apu.
By the way, grandfathered is also an inappropriate term when you dig through the history of that term.
Don't ruin that term for me. It's a perfect term. It's the perfect term.
Anyway, so, the NFL jumped through a whole bunch of hoops, decided, with all this inequality, they're going to have like Black Lives Matter in the end zone, and they're going to have, the aptly named Black National Anthem, Let Every Voice and Sing, play in front of a lot, lift every voice and sing, right? Play before the actual national anthem, before several, before major events and whatnot. And then the first time I heard them do that, when they were making all these changes, of course, this was all right after a lot of the protests and whatnot. They were at Arrowhead Stadium, and the Chiefs fans start the chant with the chop. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? We literally just made a huge spectacle about, racial harmony and respecting the African American community, and exactly what you do. So here I am.
Seminoles of Florida State are okay with that. The tribe endorses it.
Okie dokie. Good luck finding a Seminole actually in Florida. Most of them are in Oklahoma now.
They phones still work. So
anyway, we're sitting here, and of course the Braves get off to a slick start with a couple of home runs in the first inning, and I'm like, shit. And of course, one of the things that has annoyed the crap out of me lately is because the Red Sox owners have allowed the franchise to, suck for the last few years. When you go to a game, there's so many more opposing fans there than there used to be. Used to maybe a handful. Maybe the Yankees fans would maybe be the only ones who could ever afford to get there in numbers, right?
Yeah.
But geez, man. And even those, it was like, 10%, maybe 20% during the playoffs or something. But still very solidly Red Sox fans. Now you're talking like a third of the stadium. When it sucks, half the park. It's not enjoyable, right? You should feel when you're at home in your home park to be surrounded by mostly your fans. Well,
yeah, tell that to UCLA at the Rose Bowl.
Sitting in front of us. They were like 2 days early because the Sox are playing the Mets now, so they were in the wrong game. And then we had a Yankees fan sitting in front of him. There was like some guy who was, I think, just there to watch gambling sitting behind us. And then by the time the first inning ends, and a couple of these yahoos start doing the chant in Fenway Park, several fights almost broke out because a lot of Sox fans not only took exception to the chant in and of itself being in our park, but also it's really douchey.
I'm sorry. Are you talking about the Cleveland Indians chant?
No,
The tomahawk chant?
the tomahawk shot.
Yeah. They were playing. Were they playing the Commanders? I'm sorry, the Guardians?
Are you not fucking listening?
No, you cut out several times in the last couple sentences. So, no, I literally couldn't listen.
Okay, fair enough. At Fenway, Braves fans. It was Braves Sox this weekend.
Oh, that would work.
Bunch of Yahoo Braves fans at the end of the first inning, when the Braves go up on a couple of home runs, start doing the chant, and it leads to almost a bunch of fights. For starters, I hate that chant. And anytime you get like whatever the opposing team's big thing is going in your park, it drives me nuts. But that one
that's why it's so
is
effective.
really douchey. You know? Yeah, well, they all walked out with their heads hung. Why? What?
Sorry, the feed is less than ideal right now. Sorry. You froze. I panicked thinking it was my computer that froze. So, my bad.
Okay.
I would like to offer a philosophical idea about what your laments are when you're done.
No. I am in no mood to take an alternate view on it. I get people that want to root for their fans, but it's really very tacky, I feel.
Okay. What about rivalry games?
Hey, look, man, there was one time last year when the Mets were playing the Red Sox and a Yankee suck came out at Fenway.
Oh, I remember
Mets
that
fans and Red Sox fans just yelling it in unison. Sometimes harmony comes together, man, because we both hate the Yankees.
Well, I'm just saying.
But I mean, I've also lived in the South where Yankees suck. It means it's a little more personal,
a little different. Yeah. Well, at that point, you just got to humble yourself and be like, "Yeah, we do." A lot of douchey things about us Yankees.
I always used to throw him a curveball. I actually met somebody who's like, "Oh, you're a Yankee." Yeah, it's real. I'm like, yeah. No way. I'm no Yankee. I'm a Red Sox fan, man. I find that term as distasteful as you do. Dude
That
laughed.
works.
He's like, all right, man. Okay.
I'm from Beantown.
He's like, well played. No one's ever come back with that one.
Nice. Nice. I'll just say this. The fact that an opposing team's chant or whatever can get under someone's skin is exactly why that chant exists in the first place.
Don't care.
I know you don't care. You
tacky,
have your own philosophical stance.
Shitty, and it's pretty racially insensitive when it's mostly white people doing it. I'm just saying, it just looks bad. It's not a good look.
I mean, you won't see me doing a tomahawk chop unless I'm wearing a Florida Seminoles shirt, and I'll never wear a Florida Seminoles shirt. Ever.
I wouldn't wear unless my kid somehow or my nephew gets drafted into, a pro league. It's all local for me, buddy.
Yeah.
The only out of area thing I wear is my wife's alma mater when we watch college football, because it's pretty easy. I don't have a college football team.
Well, and that's where my experience of philosophy is mostly stemmed from, because I was college football. I went to a college football school, blue blood school, at the height of its latest renaissance. Got to see 2 national champions, 2 national championships, 3 Heisman Trophy winners play in person.
And some scandals thrown in for fun.
No, trumped up scandals was bullshit. They were It was all.
Can't
It
say
was
the
all.
T word will get canceled on the web.
I know. It was all bullshit. All that stuff. It
You
was
can
so
curse,
bullshit.
though.
The Heisman Trust has already given back Reggie Bush's Heisman. How bullshit that was. So they gave it back. They gave it back. Said our
Wait,
bad.
Did OJ get his back?
OJ never lost his.
Think about that. Think about that.
The Heisman
I mean, he
Trust
literally
came
lost
out.
the trophy.
The Heisman Trust came out and said, and USC also came out and said, we are celebrating the OJ of college football. We are not celebrating anything post his football career.
Man, he
And
was
I'm
a
like,
great
that
running back.
passed.
You'd see him knife
was.
through that line and slice through
Oh, I
the
know.
defenders. It was
Insane.
It was a slaughter.
And Hertz Renner. Oh,
You missed 3 of them right in a row.
yeah, I know. It took Slaughter to make me catch up, and I'm like, oh, I was gonna make a Hertz Rent-A-Car joke, but now I'm not going to because I don't want to get sued by Hertz.
Did he do Hurts?
Yeah, he was their spokesman. Like his thing was he was rushing through the airport to get
right.
to
That's
his
the Run OJ
get to-
run or whatever.
yeah, run OJ run. He would drop off the rental and run to his gate. And Hertz Rent-A-Car made it really easy to return the rental.
It was supposed, and that was like supposed to be really groundbreaking because like there's this old white lady yelling "Run OJ run," like cheering him on, like, see, it's equality.
I gotta get the drop from Arlie Ermy in Full Metal Jacket. There ain't no racial bigotry here.
Yeah, but that's where you got to stop because when he starts going down the list of racial slurs, and then he ends with "You are all equally worthless."
Looks like I've got a project after we're done recording tonight.
Hey, don't get me wrong. I loved Gunny.
Thank you.
But there's some things from that we can't do. And
you know what we can do?
Oh,
I think
it's free.
We can do that.
We can. And let's make an agreement. The next time either one of us starts cutting out, we cut our picture feed. So at least we can keep recording.
Yeah. Well, the last time wasn't because of that. That was a catastrophic computer failure.
No,
anyway.
Well, if you can't hear me from time to time, that's not good.
No, that is also true. All right. So what brings us here today?
We come to pay our respects to Luthen's wig.
It's a really good wig, by the way.
He had 3 hairstyles in these last episodes.
He did. It was great. So
each one worse than the last.
The last, well, you know, when you
try to make a 65-year-old, 70-year-old guy look like he's 30, yeah,
it's a little tough. Yeah, a very weathered 30-year-old. That's what the front line will do to you. So
it is. Oh, okay.
Well, I know. I'm speaking from experience. I mean, you could just go with the theory. So
sure,
but. So we're here to discuss Andor episodes 10 through 12, basically the last part of 4 parts in the series season 2. And this is where it all starts. This is the bridge. We had the big climax of when things look super bleak, and it's weird. It's weird because the way this is structured, and I'll let you get in on it in a second. It's almost like the 4 episodes, or I'm going to say 4 episodes because they aired, they brought 3 episodes at a time. So all 4 parts were related. They took place within a year, each part. It felt like part 3 with the slaughter of Gore, or the Gorman massacre. It felt like that was like the lowest point in everything. So this is the bleakest point, the point where the heroes have to gather themselves, figure out what they need to do and rally together to be able to make the good guys win. That's not what happens really in part 4, but it's what happens with Rogue One. It even doesn't even happen with Rogue One. It goes into Rogue One. It's all a downward trajectory for the rebellion until the end of Rogue One, and then we get to A New Hope. It's a very weird structure. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's a weird storytelling structure where things just get worse and worse and worse.
And you have this huge buildup in the 3-episode arc preceding, with the Gorman massacre just blowing everything out of proportion, and then the fallout from that, and then it's almost like a prison break, trying to get Mon Mothma safely out, because we know she gets out, but we need to know how, and how many bodies are going to drop to get her out.
They alluded to it in Rebels, which is what we talked about last time. And we actually got to see that was still a pretty harried escape, even off of Coruscant.
Right.
With Gold Squad.
When you watch Gold Squadron and the Ghost try to, get Mon Mothma out of there, they barely make it out. They actually steal
something. 2 Star Destroyers.
they steal something from Star Trek. Blast the star. Oh, okay.
Yeah. That was the one with the Takaran and Beverly Crusher.
Well, yeah, that set up what they did in Descent.
In Descent. I'm sorry, you're right. Because they had to have the metaphasic shielding from Suspicions. Yeah. And it was like 4 episodes later that they used the metaphasic shielding against the Borg.
But I'm pretty sure they did something similar to that in Redemption, when Kern and company are at the very beginning when they're dodging a bunch of Klingon birds of prey, and I think they fly through the sun's corona.
They did do that, yes.
And they used it again to get Jadzia into Sto-Vo-Kor when they basically emit this thing to erupt to wipe out a Dominion shipyard.
Oh, yeah. Star Trek uses that device a lot.
Well, it was used really twice in TNG and twice in Deep Space Nine, so they did it sparingly enough.
Using the coronal mass of a star to destroy your enemy 4 times?
Hey, look, it's better than time travel or a transporter incident.
Yeah, less contrived. I can guarantee that. So,
and Star Wars did it pretty well anyway. They used the newly formed stars in the nebula.
Yeah. Unstable, super energetic star formations, yeah.
That being said, those 3 episodes, just if you take Andor alone, was a huge roller coaster ride. And these 3 episodes, there's a lot of
10 through
tension.
12.
The action is a lot more minimal. Yes, it's a lot of suspense, and at times it feels low energy, but it's needed.
So we finally get to go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Because now what they're really doing is they're setting up the dominoes to fall into Rogue One and A New Hope. And it's really just lining all the pieces up, right? But that's because the pieces are still not all where they need to be. Saw is still somewhat human. You've got the rebels finally settling in, right? You're starting to see the formation of the command structure. More and more familiar faces are starting to pop up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get to see some people from Rogue One. You get more of Bail Organa, and you see that he's actually kind of running the rebellion.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
I think
was he just the head chair, or because we saw all of those former senators that were in that deleted scene from Revenge of the Sith,
who were also in Rogue
Padme.
One.
Yeah. See, I didn't catch the Rogue One part because I didn't know about the deleted scene back then, so I didn't recognize that. But yeah,
Sure.
I'm sure they are. I started to watch Rogue One after I finished Andor, but it was like 12:30 at night. So
Yeah, I got 30 minutes in and I just ran out of steam.
yeah. So, and then I had other things to do this weekend. But yeah, there's a lot of suspense here. You basically know you enter this going, okay, so the Gorman massacre happened, and now we have to deal with the fallout of everything. And
Yep.
things were getting hot at the end of the Gorman massacre.
Not just for the rebels, but for people in the Empire, like Dedra
Yeah.
and her boss and Krennic. And there's things coming to a head here where you see people grasping for power. And now you have people like, as a rebellion is really starting to build, you see some of these freelancers like Luthen and Saw starting to get a little more desperate, because people are starting to realize that a unified, more organized structure, even though they're spread out a bit, and you'll see this in Rebels too, because they're all operating as separate cells earlier in the series. Well, I mean, a lot of them grew up from organic, resistance against the Imperials, and then they realize, oh, well, there's other people out here. So they communicate, they start lending a hand, and then they start linking up. Like the last 2 seasons of Rebels, they're really kind of tied to the Alliance before they go back to Lothal. Here you see Saul really splintering away. Luthen is, and people who, for the most part, have been touched by Luthen are kind of viewed a little suspiciously, because he's now being seen as kind of an extremist, much like Saw Gerrera has been. Does that make sense?
I didn't hear anything you just said. I'm sorry.
Well, I was saying that Saw has already splintered off, and now
Yep.
Luthen is being seen in the same light as, maybe a little less trustworthy and a little bit more extreme.
Well, he's definitely not in the command structure.
No, he's not.
It's weird. He was basically the father of the rebel movement. So
he was one of the early fathers, again, with
coordinating everyone together. While he did the dirty work on in the underground.
But that's the thing. It's this whole idea that he could not be in that future, part of that future. He knew all the way back in season 1 he was not going to see this. That was his whole speech to Lonnie in that warehouse or whatever. That he knows that he's not going to see that sunrise. And that's because he had to do the dirty work to get it there. He knew he wasn't going to be somebody who was a battlefield general or a political leader or a symbol to rally around. He is your orchestrator. He is your spy master and get your hands dirty. He's not one of those guys who's going to be able to stand up in front of people. Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, they are people.
Orators.
They're orators, they're leaders, they're representative. They've all been about openly serving the people, even though Mon Mothma and Bail Organa have been helping supply and fund the Rebel Alliance basically since they formed it at the end of the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
At least when they just let's make a pact, okay? If we're not free in 5 years, we'll get together and fight. So,
yeah.
I mean, but Luthen is that necessary evil. Again, he reminds me a bit of the operative from Serenity.
Yeah. And you did bring him up before. Yeah. No, it's a good like kind character.
Yeah.
Because you have to have the character that does some of the dirty work, the necessary work, in order to have that ideal come through, which sucks because that's a real world, real life thing, not a fictional fantasy thing. And in our fiction, we like to have things be a little bit more idealized, especially in such a fantasy world as Star Wars.
They live happily ever after.
Yep.
You know, it's like the end of A New Hope, where there's this big celebration and the heroes get the welcome, and it's just Han, Luke. Chewie doesn't even get a medal, but he's standing up there. But like, there's no wedge. There's not like an area of draped in black that's, you know, for all the fallen who died, like the other 25 pilots who all died.
Can we talk about that awards ceremony scene? Because I feel like, first of all, I'm just going to say it. Andor was a fantastic show for Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take it all into context, that Andor leads into Rogue One, leads into A New Hope. And, you know, from the perspective of A New Hope, it's Luke gets drawn into this fight with the Empire. His aunt and uncle get killed. He has these droids that have the Death Star plans, and he gets unwittingly involved and has to save the princess, and because they all end up on the Death Star, and then, you know, they go to the Rebel base. They show this the plans, and spoiler alert, they're able to use the plans to destroy the Death Star. I didn't know, but don't know if you guys knew that. But at the end of it all, we had Luthen for decades planning this rebellion. We had Andor for years getting involved in you know, fighting the Empire, not necessarily, you know, coordinated with the rebellion, but eventually getting involved in the rebellion. But he was fighting injustices that the Empire was inflicting upon his people, right?
Sure.
And all these people get so many hours of screen time, even in Rogue One. And then at the end, when the Death Star is destroyed, after all this work all these people did to uncover what the Death Star project was, who gets the awards? A Mack truck driver and a farmer kid who just both got involved yesterday. They're the ones that are highly vaunted by the rebellion for this masterful victory over the Empire. It's like you're right. They didn't have any black flags hung in memoriam for all the people that were lost leading up to this. No, nothing for Luthen. You know, nothing for the sacrifices that Andor and oh gosh,
Rogue
what's
One.
her name? Rogue One. What's her name in Rogue One? What's her name?
Jyn Erso.
Jyn Erso and her father. And nothing mentioned. These two scoundrels instead get nice medals, and not even the dog. Not even the dog gets the medal.
So
it kind of inadvertently makes it silly.
It does to a degree, but I'm going to give you something that'll make you think a little bit more, right? So it's kind of like when your team is that one or two players away from being able to make the run, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when the Rams traded Goff for Stafford, and Stafford comes in, and they'd make a few other moves, but it's mainly Stafford who comes in, and he's trying to prove that he can be.
About?
Dude, don't be snarky like that.
I'm just not familiar with the hockey. Okay, I'm done.
When you bring in that one player, right? Sometimes you bring in a player who you think is going to put you over the top, and it doesn't. Like, look at what happens when LA Galaxy brought in David Beckham, and it was really just all it did was boost ticket sales. Didn't do anything to throw it over, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, when Peyton Manning went to the Broncos, you know, he kind of elevated them because their previous they went to the playoffs, with Tim Tebow and a 500 record, and they had they had one big play against the Steelers before the Patriots housed them. What happens? Well, Peyton Manning comes in, all HGH'd into his neck, and then come on, man,
I know. Oh, I know. I'm not refuting it. Trust me.
And then he goes out to Denver and with Demaryius Thomas and Eric Decker and that group out there. Then all of a sudden, now they're winning the division and playing in the AFC Championship game and then winning Super Bowls, or at least going to Super Bowls, right? So like that's kind of like what it is, right? You needed these things to tip the scale, right? It's Star Wars
player
or a handful. It's like Brady and Gronk going to Tampa. They get rid of Jameis Winston, who threw for over 30 touchdowns, but he also threw for 30 picks. Then Tom comes in and chucks like 40 touchdowns, and they brings in Gronk, and then other people want to play around him, and then they go and they win the Super Bowl. But that was it. The Bucs actually had a pretty, solid offense and a pretty stout defense. They just had a quarterback who was hit or miss. Then you give the greatest quarterback of all time, and what happens? They win the Super Bowl.
Oh, now he's mad. I can't see his anger, though. I'm sorry. I apologize. I prostrate myself. Elway was one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history until the Tom Brady came in and blew everything out of the water.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. He's also an asshole. But
that I can't speak to. But I have family that knows that family. And they know they love them. Nothing but wonderful interactions.
I mean, you're Colorado. You got your Colorado family, who I'm sure
not my Colorado family. Not my Colorado family, my California family, and that's all I can really go into without releasing any further info. But delightful family, the Elways, apparently. So,
yeah, I always find a little bit of take a dim view of a guy who, before he's even played it down, is like saying, "I'm not going to be traded to, I'm not going to be drafted by this team," and then threatens to go play another sport.
Caleb Williams.
I mean,
the Bears
Kyler
are practically
Murray
playing. The Bears are practically playing, golf instead of football now at this point with their administration. So.
Well, I mean, that's what Eli Manning did. Archie. They were like, yeah, he's not going to go play in San Diego.
Yeah, the gall of being able to make that kind of announcement always bothered me. I never liked it. Yeah, I understand the impulse.
It's not like Archie was Joe Montana. He was a 2-time Pro Bowler who gave the Saints like 4 years run of modest, recognition in the late 70s.
Yeah. Either way I look at it, I know this is all the hot sports talk. Just because of a metaphor you wanted to bring up, which was apt, by the way. So I mean, chapeau to you.
Well, I mean, and I feel that it fits in this case. You could talk any sport worldwide, when somebody gets brought into, you get that one or two key players that ends up putting your franchise over the top in whatever team sport it generally is, right? You bring that person in. Sometimes it happens in office, in a job or in a military unit. You bring in that solid leader or that good supporting guy who kind of fixes a hinky spot, and then all of a sudden you're a well-oiled machine and you're turning into a viable wagon,
Yeah.
And that's how I choose to look at it. Like, you needed somebody who could make that shot. And clearly Luke was the only one who could make that shot. His connection to the Force, and then having a wild card like Han Solo out there who's able to just, keep things unpredictable for even a Sith Lord.
He abandoned the rebellion before things got hot, and then he had a change of mind, and he was already outside the enemy formation, so he was basically able to flank them because of his impulsiveness. It wasn't planned. It was his impulsiveness that caused him to be able to take that military victory.
But again, it's almost like the tip ball drill for for American football, where the ball's batted up into the air by somebody, and somebody else that just happens to land right near them, and they're game changing, right? I mean, look at Malcolm Butler. He bumps one route as an undrafted rookie in the Super Bowl and saves a game, right? Now that guy wouldn't need to buy a beer. Even if he never played another down of football after that, he would never have to pay for another drink again for the rest of his life in Boston.
And I can understand that. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And I
Luke
understand
Skywalker may be more Tom Brady, whereas, Han Solo might have your Malcolm Butler moment there, but
yeah. But I mean, yes, Luke Skywalker was a big factor because he was basically the first active Force user that joined the rebellion, that had the potential to be able to use the Force. Yeah, to join the wider rebellion, had the potential to use the Force in a meaningful manner, and yeah, okay, that's the tipping point right there.
And
okay,
you want to know what I also think, because as we talk about how Andor is like, the Empire's all over, it's everywhere. But I think what helps the rebellion is that Vader gets singularly focused on Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. So Vader doesn't focus on what the rebels are doing. He focuses on what Luke is doing.
Mostly, yes. And that starts to draw Palpatine's eye. It's like, well, I'm going to go do all of these things. And then he's like, hey, you're supposed to be focusing. What the hell are you doing? And now his focus is pulled.
Doing.
Yes. So I think Luke also becomes a focal point that can actually draw things from the Empire, right? Draw the main eye from the real movers and shakers of the Empire. And, and then and Leia too, she becomes kind of a lightning rod as well. And as people focus in on these two, sometimes they didn't quite see everything else as much as they would like.
Sure.
So,
and I can get behind that. Yeah, that's a good idea. A good analysis.
But again, you don't really win the war without the people in the trenches. And Luthen is kind of your backdoor henchman kind of guy. He's the guy who he's kind of like a mob. He's like a kind of a little bit of a mob boss who has a little control, but then his lieutenants kind of like spin off and like grow beyond him. Like Cassian breaks from him like halfway through the series, really, or halfway through this season, right?
Yeah.
Really kind of breaks with him. And then other people are starting to break with him, even though he's actually the one responsible for getting Mon Mothma off Coruscant. And
he
I
knew
love
he
the
had
fact
he had
that
the intelligence that Bail was compromised.
And I like the fact that Cassian kind of throws that back in when he's getting interrogated after his rescue of Clea from Coruscant, and he's getting grilled by part of the Alliance leadership. And he kind of is like, oh yeah, well, Luthen's the one who helped Senator Mon Mothma escape with that intelligence. And even Bail Organa's like, all right, that's fair.
Yeah.
And I really like Benjamin. I really like Benjamin Bratt in the last couple episodes because he gave a very subdued but strong performance. At no point do we ever feel that Bail Organa is a very brash and outward kind of personality.
No,
he's seen as kind of an upstanding person with an upstanding member of the Senate, respectable, but also a voice of reason. and you know, a bit more of a subdued but strong presence. Clearly, he has a sharp mind and is able to keep a secret.
Yeah, that is true. I like how he played it. He didn't try to make the character his own. He played it for was it
Which in many
continuity
ways helped him
and everything.
helped him make it his own in some ways, because he wasn't trying to do it.
Right. By the way, what has Benjamin Bratt been in? He's been
Well, he was a Law and Order guy.
oh yeah, Miss Congeniality.
Um,
He played Ernesto de la Cruz in Coco. That was a good movie.
he was El Macho.
Yeah.
I loved him as El Macho.
El Macho.
He was in Demolition Man. That was an early role for him. Demolition Man.
Yeah. That's right. Well, okay. Good successor. A good successor to the mantle of Bail Organa. I agree.
He was also in Doctor Strange.
Can we talk about? Did you see Chernobyl?
No,
Okay.
I didn't.
Because so it came out back in like 2018, 2019. My son
It was one of
loves
those ones that were following up Game of Thrones. They were trying to push that into the Game of Thrones vacuum when that show started.
Yeah. Well,
to
it
end.
was good. It was
I
exciting.
know. I'm not saying it was like trying
Yeah.
to be a replacement. It was like filling the time slot.
Yeah. It was. Very well done. And while I was watching Andor, particularly these last 3 episodes, but it had been in the back of my mind, I kept getting reminded of how the Soviet officials were acting, both in charge of the nuclear power plant and those that were in the Communist Party. It was Andor did a really good job of mimicking what the Soviet style of accountability was.
So are you saying it was propaganda?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, because as you saw, the way consequences would fall on everyone, anyone underneath them would also get hit too.
Well, yeah, you see that with the Empire.
And the strategy was to blame someone else in another division, to try to push that way. That's exactly how the Soviets acted during Chernobyl. It was infuriating for me to watch because that was historically close to being accurate, and it also gave me an understanding of why the Soviet Union failed. Because
this is what dictators do.
Yeah,
people don't take responsibility for something. These oppressive dictatorships, these the this is why most of the communist countries fell, because infighting, backstabbing, you can't sustain it forever, right?
And that's exactly what we saw with the ISB.
Right. So Dedra, right? So Lonnie manages to gain access to Dedra's files. There was some stuff that had been dropped off to her by mistake, and she didn't report it because she's still digging, trying to find Cassian.
She wants
and
to know everything.
Right. But because
in her mind,
she didn't report
the more she knows, the more powerful she could be.
Well, she was watching old episodes of G.I. Joe thinking knowing is half the battle, but apparently only in a free democracy, not in a repressive regime.
I don't know if I have no. Oh, wait, here we go.
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe. I regret not having that available for you.
Still something
that
I will throw out just randomly in my lifetime. Oh, now I know. Right. Knowing is half the battle. Someone, you say, and now you know, somebody in a room will say, and knowing is half the battle.
You know what that clip was of? I mean, it was from G.I. Joe, but that lesson, that morality lesson of knowing has half the battle, was about a kid who answered the phone and a guy said, "Hello, is your mother there?" And he goes, "No, my mom's not here. She went to the store. She'll be back in 30 minutes. Oh, well, I've got some candy for you if you'll meet me out front." That was G.I. Joe trying to prevent child abduction, man. It was freaking dark.
Well, if you watch some of them, the G.I. Joe was darker than like He-Man had some. In the early Transformers cartoons had a few, but like G.I. Joe like kind of swung for the fences and they they stuck with it for most of their original run.
Yeah,
And you're
they
right.
did.
There was like it's like, you know, the house catches on fire and all this other stuff. Like people were in real peril in those G.I. Joe ones.
Yes, they were. It was so disturbing. for that
And
nice little sound clip of knowing is half the battle.
yeah, but that's also what happens here but no G.I. Joe is coming to save most of these
No,
people in Andor. That's the
no.
problem. But the funny thing is, Deidre trying to find all the information. She wants to find Cassian, find Luthen, find Axis. Then she opens herself up to an investigation by the ISB and ends up being, I don't know, smooshed by Krennic in the jail cell.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Tell me that wasn't just a little bit creepy, like when he presses his finger hard down on her head. Like,
Yeah, and her eyes go wide as you know, because he's behind her and she can't turn around. She doesn't know what he's gonna do. I mean, for all she knows, he's gonna pull out a blaster on her and just end it right there. Instead, he just pushes her scalp like she's pushing a button.
but like burying his finger into her head, which is clearly uncomfortable and meant to be psychologically disturbing.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah, and I will say, Krennic was a scary character in this last bit. He was a foe and an adversary earlier, but here he was menacing.
Yeah. Ben Mendelsohn is a really good actor.
Yeah,
the more I see him in, the more it's like,
which is why him
dying Australian accent was trying to slip out.
And him dying in secret invasion, that was bullshit. Worst series ever. Awful.
That had so much potential too.
It had all the potential and they just ruined it. I don't know what they were smoking. Definitely wasn't cocaine though, that's for sure.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing I love the most, right, about this. Up until like these episodes, the Death Star is never truly mentioned, but it's always the project or Director Krennic's project or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the cover story is it's an Imperial energy program.
Yeah.
Oh, well, clearly that's something we need to support.
To promote energy independence. And that was what was said in the board meeting, the conspiracy board meeting. And I'm sitting there going, that's a little flimsy.
So
because how can you be energy independent as an empire with multiple planets all around and all the minerals that are available within whatever? I mean,
it's very, it's very thinly veiled to real world events.
Yeah.
By the way, that conference is mimicked, is kind of an homage to the conference where the Nazis developed the final solution.
I told you that. I read an conspiracy movie.
Right. I read, an article comparing certain chunks of Andor to certain real historical events and interviews with Tony Gilroy and whatnot about where he got some, influence and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, he totally saw the conspiracy movie. The movie titled Conspiracy. He saw that.
It's also a real historical event. So he might have just read a history book.
With the way that they, with the way they portrayed like the casual discussions, in between the meetings and stuff, and the casual hors d'oeuvres that they would have on the side, that was all taken from that movie. Now, I don't know what history book would talk about that, but it was visually very reminiscent together. So
I'm sure there was some, cinematic influences as well. I mean, Star Wars is loaded with them.
Always. That's the kicker. For all the complaints about Star Wars being derivative, Star Wars has always been derivative. Every story right now is always going to be derivative because there's only so many different ways you can say it. And there's many forms of inspiration that come from these things. So,
although the movie I just saw yesterday, well, now not wholly original in concept, was I think they did a fairly original type screenplay and story.
Yeah, Sinners. You saw Sinners.
Yeah, man, that was good.
So, I think Ryan Coogler would appreciate a good endorsement like that. You don't need to keep it secret.
Oh man, dude,
I
just don't want to go down a rabbit hole. We've gone down so many already.
Yeah, you're nervous. I mean, there's really not too much to talk about. We're not going to really do a plot thing, but can we just talk about how Dedra interrupted Luthen during his burn of all the equipment and everything, and as soon as he sees who it is that's at the front door, his shoulders are like, oh, all right, here we go. And then he does a reset. And he smiles and invites her in. She's like, oh, you are open. And, she's delightful. And you're playing realize, games. They're both playing the game. They both know each other's playing the game. And she goes, well, what was it? She says something very pointed, and I like it. How many of these pieces or artifacts are in fact fake or imposters, or authentic, inauthentic? And Luthen turns and goes, there are 2 that I can think of as of current inventory, but you'll have to guess which ones. And they were the imposters. They were the inauthentic ones. They were the 2 that were that. I thought that was neat. And she says that she wants to sell him something. And he goes, oh, this will be interesting. And she stops and she goes, oh, well, now you have me nervous. Like, this little coy thing. Like, she started to be nervous to show him the communication, Imperial communicator radio, was it?
Yeah, it's a. I think it was that the radio that the Resistance had.
They did, but he had it when he was part of the infantry. He used it during the flashbacks when he met Clay.
Right. It's not saying that. I mean, that's the type of communication. There was multiple types of these communication devices. They had one. Cassian had one. So this was how they communicated. Probably some sort of narrow band.
Yeah.
Maybe even an older technology that maybe isn't even looked for much nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were using Morse code and pulse blasts or pulse bursts, which is Morse code, basically, to get through the communications override on Coruscant.
And then that's how Clea was communicating with Wilman and Andor when she has to effect her own escape.
Right. Now, I want to run a theory by you. I don't know if you liked this and shared it with me, or if I just came across it in the algorithm. The first episode 10 of the story arc, Luthen gets he mortally wounds himself to avoid capture and interrogation, and
basically it's like Harry Carey.
And by the way,
I think technically,
Well, I'm not going to really comment on the method of what he did, but it couldn't have been easy to do that.
Or quiet. He was completely quiet.
Yes, super quiet. Like he turns his back to her, and
It
suddenly,
looks kind of dull too. It didn't look super sharp either.
no, it did not. It did not. It was like 800 centuries old or something. It was like, or 80 centuries old, and yeah, it was like 8,000 years old. That dagger. So Dedra's pissed that he did this. He pulled this move on her, and they send him to the hospital. And while he's in this coma, being kept alive on tubes and basically whatnot, Clea wants to do a rescue operation, and she's remembering the time they first met, and she was hiding from the Imperial troops, I guess, on one raid, and she was in the troop carrier hiding, and Luthen comes in, and he's sitting there. He hears the screams, he hears the blasters, and he's sitting there drinking, and he goes, "Make it stop, and that tells her he doesn't want to deal with this. And they met and everything.
He protects her. He hides her.
Yes. And it's never said who Axis truly is. But I heard that the interpretation is that Clea was Axis. And it was Luthen who made it his life's decision to make up to Clea what he contributed to taking away from her. And this wasn't Luthen's battle. He had resigned himself to be Clea's tool to fight the Empire. And this was really Clea's. Clea was the heart of the rebellion.
Season 1, she's kind of, you see her like his assistant, his girl Friday,
Yep.
But this season, you start to see more and more of her. Each passing arc,
you saw me fall in love with her.
Right. She's dangerous, and she can pivot at a moment's notice. Like how she handles getting that communication device, the listening device, out of the artifact, while all the Imperials and Krennic and everybody are right there. She like tears her hand open.
Yeah, and Young's standing there trying to block the vision, and he keeps panicking. She keeps eye contact with him, going, "Move to your left."
She's basically threatening him with her eyes.
Yeah, it was well done. I thought she was a fantastic actress, a fantastic character.
This is her first ever real role.
Yeah, I heard about that too.
It's insane, and she stole the show. Oh, by the way, a lot of people are pointing to this alien here in the picture as an ET.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not?
Yeah, well, because there's also that scene in The Phantom Menace.
Yeah, again, how can you not?
Full of ETs in the Senate.
I mean, ET was a Sith Lord, by the way. So, indebted Sith Lord. So
sure.
Why would they say Sith though? Why not a Jedi?
Who said it was a Sith Lord?
There was some kind of image graphic that made its point in different panels, making the argument. But I don't know why they were convinced he was a Sith Lord. He could have just been a Jedi.
Because it's cooler to be Sith than Jedi.
Yes, I guess. I don't know. That's why I said Sith, though, because that infographic from like 15 years ago from cracked.com or something that I read, back when cracked.com was actually good. So
instead of crap.com.
Yeah, that's what it's kind of turned into.
Man, I tell you, she really, and especially in the second half of this season, Clea became so much more of a driving character. Like,
I mean, dare I say, she was more driving than Cassian was.
At times in that debate they had in the previous arc where he's like, I think I want to leave. and she's like, you can't leave, this, what are you going to do?
Shaming
Basically,
him.
she's like, what are you going to do? Wuss out? And then he goes and carries out this rescue, like one-man rescue, in the middle of maybe the most heavily watched place on the entire planet. And
Yeah.
she sees him at the safe house, and she's like, damn, dude.
I can't believe you made it.
All right. She's like, all right, you did it. I guess you can leave.
Yeah, you earned it. You earned it. Okay. Oh, this is the interrogation scene with Dedra here. Sorry.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, though, is like now all the chips are starting to fall, right? You've had characters one by one die, and now they're really starting to drop. Lonnie Young realizes that he's probably going to be discovered. He begs Luthen
and he wants off.
Take him and his family. And so Luthen kills him.
Yeah, Luthen does the most compassionate thing and shoots him in the heart.
Rather than try to smuggle him off the planet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that goes to show that Luthen didn't have any resources to smuggle him off the planet at that point. He barely had any resources to get off the planet himself. And I'm sure that's
where was that awesome ship that was in season 1? What the hell happened to that thing?
You mean episode 1? Oh, his ship.
His ship.
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows? Could have been blown up off screen. We don't know. But yeah, that would have been. Maybe it was too traceable. Maybe it had been spotted for one too many times, and he needed to ditch it.
He was. Yeah, that was really cool. But then, all the other things are dropping, right? So Luthen commits suicide. Dedra's taken into custody because all this system is, this is all botched and everything. And then this other guy, Het, or whatever his name is, Het, comes in, and he's just another Imperial ISB nerd who doesn't have any more success than any of these other guys. But he was a friend of Lonnie's, not knowing Lonnie was actually a double agent. And, Clea now tries to, and how she works her way through the hospital and all of the Imperial shutdown was pretty impressive too, right? She outsmarts everything, and then she just starts gunning down people. She kills Luthen.
Yeah.
Mercy kills Luthen, really.
Mercy, she pulls the plug. She literally pulls the plug on him.
Yeah.
Cries. And she's sad. She cries. It was necessary because there was no way she had the capacity to be able to get him out of there.
Exactly.
But this would ensure that he would pass, and he wouldn't be able to pass on information to the Empire.
Also correct.
Then
you get Dedra ruthlessly, verbally interrogated by Krennic.
Yeah, I wish I had the picture of his finger on her head.
Yeah, that is a pretty wild.
I'll do a search for it.
I'm not saying it startled me, but it was like, oh, it kind of made me go, okay, what's about to go down here?
Yeah.
But again, another thing that he's also pissed at is like she didn't bring like her boss in on this mission to confront Luthen. So that's another reason why he was pissed at her. So they assigned the investigation to Sturge Heert, who they do discover Clea is like, oh, that's his assistant. Well, we've got to find him. And they're like, well, how are we we got to find her. How are we gonna do that? We're gonna put a bolo that she's like a criminal. And everybody's like, oh no, let's say she's got like a plague, so everybody will leave her alone. Like she's a public health risk. That was pretty good. I like that. Partagats, or Qyburn from Game of Thrones, her boss Partagats realizes that the walls are starting to close in on him too as things start to go sideways. Clea makes it to the safe house, which, by the way, every time you see the safe house, later and later, it definitely looks like it's in an area that was okay, but has gotten shittier and shittier. Like in Cassian and Bix are living there. It looks fine. When Mon Mothma is brought there, the previous arc the year before, it's looking a little worn.
Yeah.
And now it's like run down. The whole area is like run down and mostly abandoned.
Although the couple that lives, the couple that lives underneath them seems to have kept their apartment up pretty well. Yeah.
It looks like that whole floor was like covered with like sheet,
Tarps.
Tarps and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, that's a good place for a safe house that nobody's going there.
Right.
But then you get all these Imperials showing up who, by the way, their assault team, no helmets. They're in pretty much all Stormtrooper armor and then those shitty umpire hats.
Can we talk about what is the use of the armor? It serves no purpose. It really doesn't.
So I've heard this discussion before. It's supposed to protect from, a lot of debris, direct blaster bolts to the chest plate, not so much. Glancing blasts, low-powered weapons, it's supposed to protect enough. But again, you even hear though that
blast from every version of a gun that we see has been able to to overpower that armor.
Well, and here's the thing: you hear in the Bad Batch, and even in Rebels, when Rex and the other clones are fighting the Empire, how they're like, "Man, this shit is so much worse than clone armor." It's probably because it was cheaper to. I'm sure it was probably cheaper to mass produce or stuff like that.
Okay, that's a nice little what do we call retcon.
Well, but also you have, I've heard people say one of the reasons why they go with all white is just how intimidating, like these all white, full armored, faceless troopers can look. You got to admit, if you're facing down 100 of these dudes, look at how skittish the people at Gorman got when all these stormtroopers showed up.
No, true, yeah.
And you have, now in episode 11, who else knows is it's a race, right? It's a race for Clea to get to get out, for Clea to get a message out, for people have now, because Luthen wasn't able to finish fully destroying his communication array, so they've been able to tap into it. So now they're like homing in on her signal whenever she pulls it out. And Willman, his communication goes off. He tells Cassian, who's like, okay, it must be Luthen. We need to go rescue him. And he grabs K2SO and their buddy Melshi, who was Cassian's prison. Yeah, who was Cassian's prison buddy, who then also was part of his team in Rogue One. And who apparently is like part-time drill sergeant over there with the rebels. He's a good sized dude. but they take the U-wing, the three of them, and against orders, and they take off, being about ready to be shot down by the rebels. And they enter in, and they're trying to figure out how to, they got to get to the safe house, but at the same time, this Imperial task force is coming in to kill, capture who's ever in the safe house. And now it's a race against time. The Cassian and company get in and out before the Imperials get there. What's going to happen when they get there? And they all kind of arrive around the same time. And it takes Kay going in and impersonating an Imperial droid to be able to get them in and out.
This was so brutal. That is a corpse.
That is also Supervisor Hirt, the dude in charge of this. And this is a pretty grim moment.
It's super
the robot
grim.
Using the human as a shield for protection.
Yeah. It is dark. It's fleeting. It is just a couple seconds, if that. It maybe half a second.
10.
You see him walking down,
You got
absorbing the
about 10
shots, and then he
seconds
throws
with
them
this.
to. Was it really 10 seconds that long?
Well, there was like a cut and then a cut back. So yeah, it was still short, but yeah, it's like, I mean, even though Deidre had given here like all of her information to basically try to complete this and hoping that it might help vindicate her a little, now everything's starting to spill that there's a super weapon because Lonnie, Luthen pumped Lonnie for all the information.
Yeah, this is a
Before he
game of
killed him.
telephone at this point.
Right.
Like
And
it's
then-
not written down. There's no recording of it. It's just one person whispering to another and passing on the information.
Right. And Luthen relays all of this to Clea, which then you're right, it becomes telephone when Luthen dies. And that's one of the reasons why I was a little worried Clea wasn't going to make it out alive, because she was like making Cassian try to remember all of these words.
Yeah, there were several moments where I thought that she was going to eat it.
Yeah.
I was dreading it in episode 12.
And she didn't. They managed to get her out there, and Kay comes in and just wrecks everybody. So they skip out. They get into the U-Wing. They blast out before Imperial reinforcements show up. They literally are heading the opposite way as Imperials are arriving.
Yeah.
It is it's a little cartoonish for a second, but just enough. And then they get to Yavin.
Can we talk about how that U-Wing from a distance looks like the RV from Spaceballs?
Sometimes
it does. Am I seeing things? There's a reminiscence there.
It might look a little bit like Eagle One.
Was it Eagle One?
I think that's what it was on it, or something like that.
Like some hair metal band,
right?
Spray painted on the side.
But they managed to get Clea out, who gets bounced around by a stun grenade, but that still has a tendency to bounce you off the walls. And so, but they managed to get out of there. They almost get shot down on the way in, and they're all like separated and questioned by Bail Organa, and the rebel leadership is about to shake Cassian down, and tear him a new one, but basically calls them out on stuff.
Well, I wrote apparently this rebel group needs a lot of inspiring speeches, because Cassian gave one to the council.
Well, because they all swept Luthen's contributions under the rug.
Right. Well,
they did. And he was more of a hardliner and not as much of a team player, maybe not the same way Saw is, but he was also very brutal and whatnot. And they're trying to form a government in exile and a pseudo military,
Sure. All well and good, self-contained. But when you take into account Rogue One, just a couple days later, Jyn Erso has to do another inspiring speech about how rebellions are built on hope. I don't even remember what the speech was like. It's been a while. Rogue One's a good show, a good movie, though. I will say that.
Hell yeah!
It's not because I don't enjoy watching Rogue One, like how I've only seen Rise of Skywalker once. So, not like that.
No, I very much enjoy Rogue One. It was a fantastic movie, and it needed to be put out there.
Yeah,
Andor was one we didn't expect to come, and that turned out to be some of the best Star Wars Andor TV out there. The last episode, somebody might argue that it's very kind of slow. There's a lot of talking, a lot of speechifying, but there's a lot of legit conversations that needed to be had. Mon Mothma is trying to step up a bit more. She wants, she gets Vel involved to try to vet what's going on with Cassian, to make sure that the information is right. A lot of people were like, yeah, we all kind of started to break away from Luthen, for our own good, but we can't forget what he did. We wouldn't be here without him. He called out Mon Mothma's rescue, Bail Organa's failed attempt to do so, all of that. And they all, at least the two of them had to concede points. You have to have all the other people who are like, we don't agree. He was because you have to have that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But, everything just starts, you start to see all the dominoes falling into place, right?
Yeah.
Clea is able to recover enough where she sits with Vel and, they talk a little bit. Cassian gets intel from Draven and is ungrounded. And it's basically he has to go meet the guy to try to confer with Saw about what's going on over Jeddah. So that becomes the whole thing where now it's setting up for the beginning of Rogue One. All the Imperials who are left, Partagats is about to be pulled down like in front of the Emperor or something like that.
Yeah.
So his loyal stooge gives him a minute, knowing full well he's going to.
Oh, can we watch
off
it?
himself. Sure.
Tell me if you can hear it. Okay.
You've
Can you hear it?
heard it before.
Bits and pieces.
Just keeps spreading, doesn't it?
It's been hard to contain.
Well,
Who do you think it is?
I'm just gonna go ahead and he asked to be left alone for a moment. And he's thinking. It's a very slow scene. Oh, I love that. That's just the thing, right?
The I think one of makes it most impactful is this little hand raise that this
The little
guy
hand
does,
raise. Yeah, like just, he knows what's happening.
Yep.
Were you able to hear all that?
Yep, I was. It was like giving his boss a little bit of dignity, or what he thinks is dignity, giving him that moment, right? So
yeah, I mean that's it.
He ends it while he's being arrested, and then it cuts to Deirdre wearing the Imperial prison gear, and then just starts to crumble as she realizes the depth of what's happening. She just starts breaking down. You've got, the information about the rebel informant. There's talk of Galen Erso and a rebel and a defecting pilot having to go to Jeddah to talk to Saw. These are all the things that start at the beginning of Rogue One that kind of gets the whole movie off and running. And there's a big debate. Is this information good? Well, it must be. It seems too big to be a trap, so we need somebody to go. So they said, okay, Cassian, you and K2SO can go and meet this guy.
And this is his hero walk.
Yeah.
He puts on the hero outfit from Rogue One, which he hasn't worn this entire series until right now. And
of course.
and then
then you get a montage of people starting to line up to where either where they are or the people who you don't see in Rogue One, what's happening to them, including Mon Mothma's husband hanging out with his daughter's mother-in-law.
Was that his mother-in-law? Was that his in-law?
Yes.
I didn't recognize her. That's a shame.
Yeah.
So they're together. He's miserable.
I guess there was originally a planned scene where not only was Mom trying to go back just before she leaves to try to either to see her family before they run out. I guess there was supposed to be a conversation with Perrin saying, basically, you could have trusted me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, plenty of things were cut, including a supposed maybe a 16-year-old Leia was supposed to appear at some point in this, but they nixed that, and
Probably for the best. Probably for the
yeah, I
best.
think so. I think so. But here you go, right? Everybody falls into place. You get Saw staring out the window at Jeddah City.
All to the starting positions for Rogue One.
Yeah.
which
get
is
a
exactly
little,
how. Sorry, go ahead.
You get just this little flash back to Mina Rao, where B2 EMO is zipping around with another little droid, and then they find Bix, who's got a baby. She looks over the amber waves of grain towards the horizon with Cassian's baby.
I felt that was fitting. At least Cassian lives on in some form. And also, Cassian never got to reunite with his robot, with his droid. We never, not once this season. Or was it Glenn Close's droid?
No, that was his droid. Well, I mean it was his and Marva's droid, right?
Right.
It didn't have like a fully functioning battery pack or something like that kind of kept it from being fully functional, but in essentially it became a pet more than a true droid. So, and they left it on Mina Rao. They couldn't come back and get it because they were escaping. Yeah. So they're like, it was kind of nice to see, he's being taken care of, right?
Yeah.
And he's probably, I'm sure, maybe he's with Bix now, right? But it was kind of nice to see that, right?
It was very nice. It was a good, instead of not knowing where Bix ended up, because I was convinced, we were both convinced that she was going to cross the Rainbow Bridge, right? Most of these characters we thought had to, but it was nice to see that conclusion of her having as close to a happily ever after as possible.
Yeah, that she's getting about as close to a happily ever after as Star Wars gets.
Because even after Return of the Jedi, there's still another whole war. There's always a war, nonstop war.
It's called Star Wars.
Oh, stop.
I mean, it is.
Excuse. That's an excuse. The constant warfare that's been demonstrated over the course of 60 years with like 20 years of Soviet style crackdowns in there. It's untenable.
So what do you think of the last 3 episodes? Do you feel that they stuck the landing, that they were painted into a corner, that they were a letdown? What do you think?
Okay, so I had been warned that episode 11, which was the hospital one, right? Where we get to see the hospital and Clea going through.
No, that was episode 10.
Was it still episode 10?
I believe, she had escaped.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is the rescue. This is the rescue for her. I had been warned that this was going to be a problem where the show goes off the rails. I didn't see any of that. I did see... Let's see. Does her telling Andor about the creator and Scarif close the plot hole on Jyn Erso not showing her father's hologram. That crossed my mind. Because remember, there was a lot of faith. Like, she had the hologram of her father, Galen, saying, I put a structural flaw in to that could be exploited, but no one else saw the hologram. Only she did.
Yeah,
I think
that
kind of
is a
gap.
plot hole. Yeah,
I think it gave him, it closed that plot hole so that it gave Andor an opportunity to trust her, because he's like, oh, I heard something close to this. Yes. So, but anyway, this episode 11 did not launch anything off the rails. This last 3-episode arc was just, it was perfection. Exceptionally well done.
Closeout. I think it was
fantastically well written. You cared for what happened with these characters. You actually got to have some conclusion to be able to work with, whereas you got the excitement of the ending points are the starting points for Rogue One, which is how they did it, which is why I enjoy watching the end of Revenge of the Sith and the beginning of A New Hope. Because it's just like you see their resting points where everyone gets to their starting positions for A New Hope.
Sure.
And that was, say what you will about Revenge of the Sith. It was well enough done, and it had one of the best endings ever.
Well, it was definitely, Revenge of the Sith, I think, was probably the best of the 3. And as you watch with a little bit more time and maturity, and when you watch the sequel trilogy, which basically just rehashes, A New Hope in The Force Awakens, you start to go, you know what? I think as I'm rewatching, and when I rewatched the prequels with my kid as she was getting into Star Wars, I'm like, these are better than we probably gave them credit for.
Well, you can say what you want. I mean, the prequels are flawed, but at least George was trying to do something different. He was trying to do something different. Whereas as soon as Disney got a hold of it and put together the sequel trilogy, they were like, let's not do anything different. Like, and that was what was irritating, because it took me about 5 days of me thinking about Force Awakens after I saw it, because something wasn't sitting right with me. It was just chewing in the back of my brain and going like, why do I feel unsatisfied by this movie? Why? And I'm just like, well, the glaringly scientifically inaccurate issues of everyone in the galaxy being able to see the same thing all at the same time in real time, that irritated me. But no. Yes. And then I'm like, you know what? It's just a rehash of A New Hope. And that's when I'm like, oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, they did some new things inside the story of the plot, but it's still the same thing. So, and that's what irritated me. I felt bamboozled.
I think that's pretty solid.
Used for my good faith base, so to speak. So,
agreed.
This Andor. No, when this show was announced, I remember going, I don't need this. We all know how this ends. Well, God bless them for getting a great writer or writers, because it shows. This is some fantastic Star Wars, and I can guarantee you we're never going to get something of this caliber again, because no one watched it. Because all that good faith I talked about, most of that's been used up.
Which is a shame too, because it was well done, well acted. I mean, this hopefully people will get, it'll hit at the Emmys. I mean, if these were the Oscars, it would hit at the Oscars, because this is so esoteric and niche that it should win an Oscar.
Right. With the way the Oscars have been going for the last 25 years. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to give it a solid A+. I never give out A+. I never do. Not for new things.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give it a cumulative A+ because just across the board, even the weak spots were basically solid, and there were things that were so good that kind of covered these things. You know, if you don't want to give it a full 100, you can give it a 98. That's still an A+.
It is. It is. No doubt there. So,
and I got to be honest with you. Some of these characters who I didn't expect to really want to, not that I didn't want to root for them, but some of the characters, you're like, golly, I really like this character, or this actor is knocking it out of the park. Like, I've seen a lot of interviews with Diego Luna, and I just really like this guy. He just seems really positive, and he's really excited about this. He's so happy to be in Star Wars, and he's just like, he's a little Pedro Pascal, and like, he's kind of a very positive guy, but he's a little more upbeat, whereas Pedro can play a little more lower key. I mean, he's still, but I mean, I really like Diego Luna. He crushed this. If
I would argue that Diego Luna has a better personality than Pedro Pascal.
He's definitely more bubbly.
Yeah,
and I do like it, and it's kind of a contrast too when you see him after you've watched Andor, and you're like, oh God, this guy's just such a happy guy.
This guy can smile. What? How's that possible?
I mean, every major character just seems to have a moment to shine. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Hopefully this will gain traction. I hope time it'll accumulate some minutes and whatnot, but we'll see.
Yeah, we need people to do this. Like, take this as an example, and like, oh, that's good.
Yeah, we need the fans to respond to the good stuff rather than the bad stuff.
Yeah, if you're gonna, if you're gonna rip something off, at least rips the good stuff off.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. All right. Well, anything else before we sign off, DT?
Nope.
All right. Well, that does it for another episode. We are those sci-fi guys. I am P.S. McKay. Until the next time, you guys keep dreaming. We'll keep working. So long, everybody. It's out there.
And I'm DT Cavman, and it's over, Mack. I have the high ground.
Yeah. Those Sci-Fi Guys is an independent broadcast by Alpha Site Productions, produced by DT Cabman and P.S. McKay. Silverman Sound Studios' Fiddle DD is under Creative Commons license. For more information on upcoming episodes, follow P.S. McKay on X at P.S. McKay or go to thesci-figuys.com for past episode information. You can now find us on Spotify, so head on over there for our latest episodes, but don't worry, you can still find us on Apple, as well as Rumble and YouTube. So be sure to leave a like and a comment and just let us know how we're doing.